In a world where most people watch movies and then forget about them, two brave heroes join forces to watch them again and then talk about them. Join them in their epic journey as they go back in time, a decade and beyond, to revisit and break down films from a vast array of genres. Do these movies hold up over time? Are they classics? Find out on Retro Movie Roundtable. Starring your hosts, John Flack and Russell Guest. Coming now to headphones in your ears.
Welcome, all you lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable. Welcome to where we watch movies and then talk about them. I'm your host, Russell Guest. Sadly, today, not joining me is my usual co-host and good friend, John Flack, but today we have his best friend and a heck of a co-host, familiar voice for all of you. Guess who's back? Back again. Frye is back. Tell a friend. Bryan, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Russ. Thank you for that Backstreet Boys reference.
That's Eminem, man.
Oh, okay. Something I equally didn't listen to back in the early 2000s.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So as you see, Bryan Frye's here, and we can't pick up our early 2000s nostalgia well, but this is going to be off the record, on the QT, and very hush hush, because today joining us is from after the credits from Los Angeles, California, Tyler Harlow. Tyler, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
So good, man.
Always a pleasure.
We're talking movies. I'm definitely going to be good.
Oh yeah, and this is a great one.
So as I mentioned, you're the head and creator of After the Credits, which is a really cool website. Tell the viewers at home what this is.
It's a website that I created. The link is afterthecreditsblog.com. I love movies and I love talking about movies, and I thought, why not channel that love and excitement and passion into a website so that other people could share that.
It's pretty cool. I mean, it's a lot of content. You got it up there. I see you've got everything playing now, and there's a lot of information about stuff out there that's actually in theaters now. You've got TV, you've got some video games, in fact, too. So it's a little all over the place. How do you keep up with it all, man?
Well, originally I didn't. It was just me. I really started getting into it in November, and I did, I think 19 movie reviews by myself in that whole month. And, it was a lot of work, a lot of time. So I, have a couple friends that are helping me out, write reviews, not just reviews, as anything entertainment related. And, yeah, we're just, looking to get all that information out there.
Well, that sounds fantastic, man.
It is cool, man. Thank you for coming on the show and sharing your expert knowledge with us. I think we got to ask you, though, some deep-cutting questions. Are you ready?
As ready as I'll ever be.
Who is your favorite female actress?
I'd have to say right now, and I'm going to do a tie, Charlize Theron or Amy Adams. I think that they're both incredible actresses, and they're turning in some of their best work, especially recently, and especially Amy Adams. It seems like she's in everything, but she doesn't ever phone it in. She puts in a great performance. She's very dedicated, and there are some movies that hinge on her performance, like Arrival from a couple years ago. I thought that she was fantastic in that, and I just look forward to the roles she keeps taking.
Have you watched Sharp Objects yet?
I haven't gotten a chance to. I really want to, because I also like Gillian Flynn. I think she's a fantastic writer. I've read the book. I haven't gotten a chance to see the show. Don't have HBO, so I'm either going to have to steal someone's Go code or pay through Hulu or Prime or something like that.
Well, as a longtime book peddler, we appreciate you reading the book first.
Of course.
He runs a movie website, man.
Well, listen, and just on what you said about Charlize, Atomic Blonde blew me away, and I love seeing how many of these podcasts I can plug Atomic Blonde on. This is at least the second, but yeah, if you haven't seen Atomic Blonde yet, totally worth it.
It's interesting. We asked the same question to Josh Evans on the Never Ending Story episode, and he also got asked the same female actress question. He also said Charlize. So it's deja vu all over again, but it's fun to hear it from another perspective. So,
hello, Charlize Theron.
What is your favorite childhood movie, Tyler?
I find it very ironic that you happen to mention Neverending Story because I also tied on that one. It's a Neverending Story and then Rudy. I watched Rudy a lot when I was a kid.
Solid.
Good ones, good ones. Who is your favorite movie detective?
I don't know. I think that there are some easy ones on my list that I could plug, like Seven or Heat or even Hello Clarice and Silence of the Lambs. But ironically, I might have to go with Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character Brendan in the movie Brick. If you haven't seen that movie, it's one of Rian Johnson's first movie, if not his first movie. It's a murder mystery noir set in modern day in high school, and all the kids talk like 50s detectives.
Sold.
I would say it's pretty awesome if you haven't seen it already.
I haven't, but I will. Hey, Russ, can I jump in here real quick?
Go for it.
I wanted to talk about Dick Tracy, Warren Beatty, and Rick Deckard, Blade Runner.
So what is the last movie you've seen?
The last movie I saw was actually Glass. It's a mess, but it's a very enjoyable mess for me. I freely admit its faults. I just had fun watching it.
Sometimes the best ones are the ones you just really enjoy that way.
Yeah,
I mean, ratings seem to only merit it on craft. They don't always capture enjoyment.
Last movie, if you guys haven't had an opportunity to see it yet, The Greatest Showman was fantastic.
I did.
Oh
see
yeah, it's that was ended up being one of my favorites from a couple years ago. And I haven't originally when I saw that movie in the theaters, I didn't like it. And then through my job, I got sent the soundtrack and I started listening to the soundtrack a lot and then went back and saw the movie and loved it.
I'm at the point now where if Hugh Jackman is in a musical, I will see it without worrying about what it is.
He took a very unlikable character and made, like in real life, P.T. Barnum, if you don't know, is a terrible person, and made him very likable and very, you wanted to root for him to do right by his family. And
I didn't know most of the history of that. I kind of assumed he was kind of a but...
Oh, he definitely is.
So we're going to get into the movie today, which is L.A. Confidential. It came out in 1997. It made $64.6 million domestically, according to Box Office Mojo. It places in 24th on the year in the box office, and the movie that places ahead of it is Anaconda in 23rd, and the movie behind it was In and Out in 25th. This is a better movie than Anaconda, I'll tell you that now. And IMDb, IMDb gives us a...
John Voight, no.
IMDb gives us a rating of 8.3. The critics of Rotten Tomatoes really love this movie. They give it a 99%, so that's about as fresh as it gets. And audiences aren't far behind because the audience has given this a 94%. And it's got some Oscar hardware as well. It got nominated for 9 Academy Awards, and it took away 2 of them. The winners were Kim Basinger for Best Supporting Actress, and as well as Hanson and Hyland for the Best Adapted Screenplay. It also got nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Dramatic Score, Best Sound, Best Cinematography, Best Art Direction, and Best Film Editing. However, every single one of those nominations that it didn't win went to Titanic that year, which came in and just rocked the whole world out. Titanic just took everything that year. So
I was looking at that before this because I was wondering what it was up against, and it's just a shame that Titanic came out that year because I think this might have just cleaned up everything, at least for me.
Yeah, I hear you.
So let's get into where you guys stand on this movie coming in. Have you seen it before? What were your thoughts coming in this time? If you had, how long had it been? When was the first time you saw it? So just give people a little feel for where you are on this movie. Tyler, take this one first.
So I was about 11 years old when this movie first came out. Yeah, so I was a little bit young. My parents didn't want me to see the R-rated movies yet, especially violent ones. So I think I saw it more like a couple years in the future where I started to go back and see some of the movies that my parents didn't want me to see. I loved it. I love the mystery genre. I love the crime genre. There's just especially like 50s like Nothing made me happier than seeing a bunch of dudes in suits with shotguns running around in this movie. It just all felt right to me, and it just, yeah, I fell in love with it from the acting to the score. I know we'll get into that later, but yeah, across the board, like I've enjoyed this film for a long time.
So awesome. So you've seen it several times then?
Oh, yes.
Okay, and how long had it been since you last seen it?
I believe that I watched it again after Curtis Hanson passed away. So that was about 2 years ago.
Interesting. And Brian, how about you, man? What's your backlog with or backstory with this one?
So we used to have this place back in college called Vintage Videos and Games. I don't know if it's still there in Morgantown or not, but it was this awesome little store where you could go in and buy movies for like $2-3 on DVD. And when I first went to college, I fell in love with the place because at the time, basically all my used stuff came from, this is pre-Amazon and everything else. So I was buying everything used from Blockbuster. And usually stuff went out pretty quickly. So if you weren't on top of your game, you couldn't get a whole lot of backlog product. So I found this place, just started buying up movies. I was like, oh, that looks awesome. Oh, that looks awesome. So I really just became a consumer of movies heavily at that point. And this is one of the movies I bought. So at some point in college, I saw this movie. It blew me away. I was like, this is a fantastic movie. And it really kind of kicked off my love of crime noir films, period. Kind of like how, like, if you go back and rewatch Ryan Gosling's Gangster Squad, it would basically be a prequel to this movie. So I don't know. It's something I really, really enjoy.
Absolutely. I myself had seen this one only one time before, but I saw it and loved it. It was probably about 5 years ago that I got to it, and I believe I got it off of one of the movie channels on TV, and my wife Mary and I watched it, really enjoyed it, and so I was excited that this was the movie that we're going to come back and do today because I have good memories, and I gotta say, it holds up. Before we go forward at this point, though, I want to remind everybody there's going to be spoilers that lie ahead. We're going to completely talk about all the major plot points in order to really assess the movie. So if you haven't seen LA Confidential, I highly recommend you do see it and then come back and finish listening here. And if you have seen it, then we'll be back after this break. Ken Creeves here to ask, do you want to save time in the kitchen? Of course you do. Well then, we have the perfect thing for you. It's the Retro Movie Roundtable podcast. It slices, dices, juices, purees, poaches, fries, boils, broils, tenderizes, vacuum seals, self-cleans, and shares the experiences of great movies. It even has a flan setting. Too good to be true? Well, it is. How does it work? Simply put it in your ears while working in the kitchen, and your cooking experiences will be dramatically improved. Yes, it's that simple. To order more Retro Movie Roundtable for your household, go to iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or any other place where you get your podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review, and comment on the show. Tell them how to make the show better, if that's even possible. Compare it to other kitchen devices by giving the show a like on Facebook and writing the show at retromovieroundtable@yahoo.com. Act now, and for a limited time, we will give you 2 episodes of Retro Movie Roundtable for the price of 1. It's that easy. What are you waiting for? The Retro Movie Roundtable is not a kitchen device and does not do most of the previously mentioned tasks. There is not a flan setting, but there is a great listen while you're working in the kitchen and will improve your cooking experiences. Do not let this offer pass you by. The Retro Movie Roundtable makes a great gift for your friends, family, or that weird quiet guy at the office. Do not delay. Act now. Retro Movie Roundtable. As mentioned before, we're about to get into those spoilers, and the no better way to spoil it than to go through the plot and refresh our memory. So if you haven't seen it, we got your back. Tyler's going to give us a plot summary. You ready, man?
I'm ready. We open in 1950s Los Angeles, where the police department is riding high after finally imprisoning famed gangster Mickey Cohen on tax evasion. After Cohen's arrest, several members of his organization are taken out by a hit squad, and his heroine has gone missing. LAPD has taken pride that they are keeping the streets clean by threatening any other criminal organization that tries to set up shop and gets them to skip town. Soon we are introduced to our 3 main cops. There's Bud White, quick to anger, and enjoys punishing men who hurt women. During one of these incidents, he and his partner Dick Stensland cross paths with a former cop named Buzz Meeks, who is connected to Pearce Patchett, proprietor of the Fleur de Lis escort service, where the prostitutes are made up to look like famous actresses. Second is Jack Vincennes, the celebrity cop who loves the spotlight and is also a consultant for the Badge of Honor TV show. The third is Ed Exley, whose police detective father was murdered and never solved. However, he won't step a toe out of line in his pursuit of fair justice until he becomes a detective, despite his Captain Smith's urging. After the bloody Christmas brawl between cops and Latino prisoners, Captain Smith and the DA demote Bud and Vincennes for their involvement, but Exley is promoted after being very willing to throw his fellow cops under the bus. A short time later, Bud's ex-partner Stensland is found among the dead in what would be dubbed the Night Owl Massacre. Exley and an angry Bud begin their own separate investigations. Exley, along with Vincennes, investigate the lead that 3 African-American teens were seen with firearms in the area of the Night Owl. When arriving on scene, they find other cops who have discovered shotguns and a car matching the description of a car seen at the Night Owl. After a brief altercation, the men are arrested. Meanwhile, Bud, who recognized one of the victims, Susan Lefferts, from his run-in with Meeks, investigates Patchett, who gives Bud the name of one of his girls, Lynn Bracken, who has been made to look like Veronica Lake. After being questioned by Exley, the African-American men escape, and Exley tracks them, leading to a bloody shootout that leaves the men dead. Exley is declared a hero, and the Night Owl murders are pinned on the African-American men, and the case is closed. After Bud begins an affair with Lynn, lingering doubts plague all 3 officers. Bud questions Lefferts' mom, only to discover the rotting corpse of Buzz Meeks under her house. Exley, who is becoming suspicious of Bud, opens up to Vincennes about his father's death and how he uses the made-up name Rollo Tomasi as the name for any criminal who gets away with their crime, and it's his inspiration for becoming a cop. Vincennes agrees to help him, and not only discovers Bud and Lynn's relationship, but uncovers that cops are behind the murders. When he goes to tell Captain Smith, the captain shoots and kills Vincennes, but not before he utters the words, Rollo Tomasi. Captain Smith uses the name in conversation with Exley, who then realizes Captain Smith is dirty. Bud and Exley partner to discover what is really happening, which is Captain Smith has begun to take over Cohen's empire now that he is in jail, using cops as a hit squad and taking possession of Cohen's heroin. Meeks and Stensland were loose ends who used to work for Smith that needed dealt with and serving as the inspiration for the Night Owl murders. This all leads to a bloody shootout, with Exley and Bud having to fight off all of Captain Smith's corrupt cops. Bud is left for dead, and Exley is severely wounded, but not before shooting Captain Smith to avoid any chances of him getting away with his crimes. Bud survives, and he and Lynn drive off into the sunset to Arizona, while Exley stays to continue on the force.
Really appreciate that. That's a lot of stuff going on there, and you did a good job to bring it all together. So,
thank you. And that's like half the plot.
No, but that's the major stuff. That's what we're talking about. I think people's memories are jogged if they haven't seen it since 1997. What do you guys think about the plot? Brian, how does the story on this one go down for you?
I think it's fantastic, just in the way that those old kind of mystery / detective novels go. They actually dived into this a little bit in the movie Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, where you always have separating plot points that end up tying together at the end. And it's true. That is how a lot of these, crime noir things went. And it's just one of those plot points that I've always enjoyed. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think this movie really did any wrong.
Interesting. I thought I had been reading a little bit. I have not read this book. Have either of you?
I actually have not.
I have not either. Shame on me.
It's okay. And you don't have to read every book that's in the store. I wanted to look at a few things, and again, I haven't read it, but from what I read, so this is the third book of a quartet of books that take place in Los Angeles by James Ellroy, and it's a novel that it features 3 intertwining narratives of 3 detectives, as Tyler mentioned, Bud White, Ed Exley, and Jack Vancines. So the book spans way more time, has way more tangents, and goes into far more directions, which a book certainly can do over a movie. And so this was really daunting to come into this as creating a movie. And sometimes when a movie is so complicated, you lose things. And they talked about cutting it down to only being about Bud White, and getting rid of Ed Exley's character. And the producers pressured, well, okay, then if you can't get rid of Bud White, you can't get rid of Ed Exley, then let's make it only about him. We can pay a real actor to come in instead of Bud White. And so this movie had a lot going against it, as we may talk about a little bit later. But this is an interesting movie that had to find where it wanted to be within this. So the book has quite a bit more in it.
As to be expected, like you said, some stuff just has to be cut due to the nature of movies, or even changed. I know that I've read some articles where they changed some of the aspects of the book and made it, I guess, a little more cinematic in its reveals or how the scene plays out, or things like that. It's something that has to happen though, and I mean, if the stuff is this good in the movie, I'm very curious of what the book is like.
I've got a couple of differences, and you can let me know whether you guys like this or better or not. But from my standpoint, I think the movie actually made some great improvements. In the book, Jack Vancine's character, which is played by Spacey, has way more of a role in it. And after he loses his position, he goes into sent to Vice. So he's sent to Vice, and he loses his wife. He becomes a drunk, and he seeks redemption at the end. So it goes a lot darker in his story, and they kind of cut all that out and just kind of keep it simple. And another thing that I think that was interesting is the book has a full-out love triangle between Lynn, Bud, and Ed. Ed and Lynn, and Bud and Lynn. And the movie revises this to just be, Ed is kind of in a forced situation with Lynn, and it's just a brief physical encounter. Still very stressful for Bud, but nowhere near as involved as the book. And another big one is, in the book, Dudley's alive at the end. He doesn't get shot in the back, and he lives to the end of the movie, which considerably changed the ending. And also, the movie added the fight scene in the evidence room where Bud and Ed start to fight each other and then get on the same page, because in the book, Jack, Bud, and Ed all sit together, just piecing together what they know in a long, drawn-out conversation with not anything major going on, so not nearly as cinematic as Tyler said. So, Bryan, good moves for the movie?
Oh, absolutely. It's just funny. My brain's been sitting here working as you guys have been talking about this, because The Black Dahlia was another one of my favorite movies, which is apparently also written by this guy. And it also features a love triangle, and the whole detective crime noir style. So it's just another one of those things. I actually rushed over to check the IMDb for that, just in case any of the detectives were the same name. Just out of curiosity, it was Josh Hartnett and Aaron Eckhart in the love triangle with Scarlett Johansson.
Interesting. And as you mentioned, the Black Dahlia is one of the 4 books in the quartet as well.
Right. Yeah, that's why I was like, oh my God, did I not put this together earlier?
Which I think the only crossover character is the DA, Ellis Lowe. He carries over into the Black Dahlia.
Got it.
Different actor, but the character's still there.
Interesting. Bryan, do you want to take us on a run-through of the cast so we can get to know who's playing who?
Oh, this is a fun one. There's a lot of good people in this. So we start off with Russell Crowe's Bud White, Guy Pearce's Ed Exley. We got James Cromwell's Dudley Smith. We have Kevin Spacey's Jack Vancine. We've got Danny DeVito is Sid Hudgens. We've got Kim Basinger as Lynn Bracken. We've got David Strathairn, Pearce Platchett, and Ron Rifkin, who's one of my favorites from my Alias days, D.A. Ellis Lowe, as we just were discussing.
Strathairn I always remember from, Dolores Claiborne or A League of Their Own.
He's usually not a pleasant person in movies.
No, but he's not particularly unpleasant here.
No, he honestly, I think the culture shock casting, at least looking back on it now and how it might have looked in '97, I think it was actually really smart of them to cast someone like James Cromwell as Dudley Smith, because he had just played the farmer in Babe like a year before this, and so they were like, oh, how could that guy be the villain?
Yeah, you suspect that he's a good guy.
With a spotty Irish accent.
What's that, boyo?
Well, I think it's interesting in that the movie seems loaded by today's standards, but at the time, the name value of these guys wasn't what it seems now. Russell Crowe was not a household name. Guy Pearce was an unknown commodity, both of whom are Australian. And Spacey was building a name for himself, certainly, and had an Oscar nomination. Did he win, Tyler? I forget.
Yeah, this was after he won for Usual Suspects.
Okay. Basinger certainly was known, but she and Danny DeVito and Spacey were probably what got this movie going, is what Russell Crowe was saying in an interview. The fact that there were all these different characters made it a little harder to get made. Great cast. I mean, it seems like a dream team by today's standards, doesn't it?
Well, he really hit a knockout blow, or at least Guy Pearce really hit the knockout blow with Memento, and that was like 3 years after this.
But you could see the talent just rewatching this. I mean, Kim Basinger's great. Don't get me wrong, but like Guy Pearce and even Russell Crowe, who doesn't even look like the Russell Crowe that we know at this point. I think they were the stars of the show. And, I know you were speaking to Vancine's having more of a role in the book, but I can't help but wonder if, Spacey was kind of stunt casting and it was really to get the movie going, like you said. And then I wonder if he allowed the part to be trimmed down to give Russell and Guy the spotlight.
Very well could be.
Well, actually, Curtis Hanson had been trying to work with Kevin Spacey for some time and had suggested him multiple times, and the studios were saying, no, we don't want this theater actor guy. And when LA Confidential rolled around, he called Spacey up again and said, I don't think they're going to say no this time, coming off of his Oscar win.
Even looking at the poster, I clicked on the link of the poster here for here on IMDb. Spacey is the first name listed. He's very prominent. It's Basinger, really big. Then it's Spacey, slightly smaller. Then Guy Pearce is behind Spacey. And then all the way in the back is Russell Crowe.
Yeah.
It's very interesting how they marketed this movie, because I feel like people might have even come into this and where did Spacey's role go?
So let's talk about each of these detectives here a little bit. We got Ed, who's kind of a political, straight arrow, intelligent kind of guy, but he's ruthlessly driven opportunist, I would say. Principled and articulate. Brian, what was your take on Ed Exley?
Your typical political climber. I understood the kind of avenue he was going for, but you could also see it from, especially how they portrayed him, that kind of insufferable Boy Scout. It's one of the things that got tossed around with Harrison Ford's Jack Ryan a lot, but I felt like it was never a demeaning piece for Ford, whereas in this, you kind of saw why it pissed everybody off.
I think he undergoes the most transformation of any of the characters.
Oh, hands down.
He comes in, like you said, being squeaky clean by the book. I'm going to climb the political ladder. To, yes, I want to be
boss in the back.
Yeah, I will still be opportunistic, but I'm here to serve justice, and I am willing to get my hands dirty. So he learns to work with Bud to get the answers he needs. He learns to work with Jack to work these back channel sources. And so I just thought that he was probably one of the most interesting characters in that he undergoes the most amount of change. Still has an agenda and knows how to work the system, but he learns to become a leader by working with all these people who he thought he was better than coming in. Tyler, anything more on Ed?
I agree with you. His character had the most growth throughout the movie, but you could kind of sense that coming. I made sure that I had this exchange written down. It happens very early in the movie. I'm not going to do the whole back and forth, but it starts out with the captain saying, "You have the eye for human weakness, but not the stomach." And then he proceeds to ask him a bunch of questions, because this is when he's kind of questioning Ed about whether he actually wants to be a detective. It's like, would you be willing to plant evidence on somebody, even if to ensure their indictment? No. Would you be willing to beat a confession out of a subject? No. Would you be willing to shoot someone in the back in order to offset the chances that lawyers will get him off? And the answer, he says no. And then he's like, then don't be a detective.
Which, awesomely enough, is exactly what he ends up doing to the guy that was asking him at the very end of the movie.
Exactly. It's foreshadowing that he learns to do all these things that he was set against doing, and he learns to do that to operate within the system. Even though initially he was willing to alienate everybody just to get ahead.
And I think it speaks to the power of the Oscar-winning script and as well as the performances as well, that they're able to sell this transformation. Like, you actually see him going through all these steps. You see him learning that he can't be squeaky clean to be a detective, and him being ultimately having to be okay with it.
So Bud is a rugged ends justify the means kind of guy, but he's still driven by his heart, and there's a warm side to him because he falls in love with this prostitute Lynn, and definitely has a soft spot for women and justice for women. Let's go Tyler on this one. Talk about Bud. What were your thoughts on Bud as a character?
He wasn't as complex and well drawn as Ed Exley, but I still enjoyed kind of what comes across as like a brash and hard person kind of falling in love and falling out of love with the things that made him successful in the police force, which was beating up people, which was kind of being this blunt instrument that Captain Smith and the other police officers would use, to just really being in love and letting that win in the end and get out. I greatly enjoyed that as well.
I think he is a complex character because on the outside he's this instrument of destruction. He's a tough guy, but I mean, at the same time, he does have this heart. He's driven by emotion, and even in a moment of weakness, he has this complicated backstory about how his father hit his mother and, I guess killed her, right? While he was chained up to a radiator, I think it was, or that might be confusing with the book. But yeah, he is driven by this injustice in his life to become this person. And we even see a moment where he has a moment of weakness and true passion and anger, slaps Lynn because he's so hurt that she slept with Ed Exley, the guy that he just so hates. There's a lot. I do think there's good complexity here. What do you say on this one, Brian, about Bud?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. One of the characters that Bud really reminds me of, and this is another kind of gritty crime movie, although it's the other side of the coin in this one, is Mel Gibson's Porter in Payback, where, you see him doing a lot of shooting, a lot of beating people up, but in the end, he's got a brain. I definitely think that the whole purpose was for you, and this is where Cromwell's character got him wrong, was, he saw him as a blunt instrument, and when he ends up being more like a broadsword, it ends up turning the tables on him.
Absolutely. Brought the wrong guy in. And the last guy I really wanted to go into depth like we're doing, which is a lot of fun, is Jack Vancine's. This is played by Spacey. He's a glamour cop, if there is such a thing, or a glamour detective. But he knows how to work the back channels. It's all about who he knows. He talks to people to find out things. But he's always looking for money on the side. He's looking to rub noses with the Hollywood stars and plants drugs. He's a who knows who kind of guy. Let's go with Tyler on this one. What do you think? What do you think of Jack Vancine's?
He actually is involved in one of my favorite scenes in the movie, which is in my synopsis when the whole reveal of Guy Pearce about Rollo Tomasi and about that's why he became a cop, and then he turns to Jack and was like, "Why did you become a cop?" And Spacey's just kind of staring out into nothing, and he goes, "I don't even remember," or he says, "I don't know."
That's a real turning point.
That to me spoke worlds about that character who we've seen at this point wheel and deal and get money and doesn't care who he hurts to get more and more into the spotlight and be the I like that term, glamour cop. To see him kind of have like a moment of introspection, I think was very effective.
You're right. That's definitely the big moment. His big moment is when he's questioned on that. But it is a changing moment for him because he leaves his money at a bar, stares at his reflection in the mirror, and he's not sure that he doesn't like the fact of what he's become. He doesn't like the fact that he can't answer the fact of, why did you become a cop? And Ed had this inspiring story that drove him, and he didn't have that feeling behind them. So Ed recruits Jack to help him out because he knows how to work the channels, and I thought that was interesting. What do you think about Jack's character, Brian?
Here's how I would put Jack, just based on what you just said. Guy Pearce, in a way, does something very subtly that he himself says he's against. He, in fact, buys Kevin Spacey based on the back channel workings of what he did initially, which was taking him out of his element in his TV show and stuff like that. So he knows how to work Kevin Spacey. He hasn't pegged. Kevin Spacey's character is one of the more interesting ones for me, just because I guess I kind of get the glitz element. He's very non-apologetic of how he makes his money, of how he solves cases. Like, everybody tries to give him a hard time, but the fact that he has zero care about it, like, it gives nobody a real niche to like really dig him. That's why everybody kind of likes him and no one doesn't really. So I guess one of my favorite parts of the movie is how Guy Pearce can kind of work Kevin Spacey. Kevin Spacey has this moment of clarity with Guy Pearce. And then in the end, as his last act, and this is one thing that I've mulled over a lot, does he say that he'll tell Guy Pearce? Does he say it just because he finally gets it? Like, why does he say the name? Like, did it just pop into his head?
I think he's doing it to plant. I think he's doing it so that Ed Exley might find out that he talked to him and that it's a flag. I think it's a seed he planted.
But I mean, the more I think about it, it's like I could see him also saying it just because he's like, this is it. This is exactly what happened to Ed's dad. And he says the name because it's dawning on him what he meant. Now, the unintended consequence was he brings it up to Ed Exley. So I've seriously had this, when I rewatched it to do the podcast, I had this huge internal debate on, was this intended to be this? Was it intended to be this? I felt like there were three avenues here, and I loved the internal mental debate on why.
I'm starting to feel you on this, Frye, because I after he says Rollo Tomasi, he kind of laughs to himself, like he chuckles. Yeah. And I thought that, like, in my head, I was like, oh, that's because he knows that Captain Smith is going to mention, like, he knows that he's setting him up. And that, you know, like, there's no way that Captain Smith is going to figure out that he's setting him up. Like, we got him type of thing. Mm-hmm. But now I'm kind of with you, because I actually thought Vancine was the one character who, while he didn't, I don't think he completely arced like Bud and Ed did, but I thought he had like a small bit. I think he may have arced more than I thought that he did, and had that moment of realization that, yeah, like you said, like that this is what Ed meant. This is the feeling.
Yeah, and this is the guy that gets away.
I also wanted to point out how fun it is to watch Ed and Bud make a team. They each one brings to the other what they don't have. They're such foils for each other. Bud's this bad cop, all emotion, you know, beat you up, and then Ed's a cerebral guy, and at one point Bud's like lamenting, I'm not smart enough to figure this out. Well, Cromwell also laid the illusion down when he told Bud, he's like, I hate that guy, and he's like, the Force needs smart people like him. And then at the same time he told Ed, he's like, Bud's a good detective who's willing to do what needs to be done. And that's foreshadowing, and that those two guys will help each other with the parts that they don't like about each other, coming together to reinforce and take down, oddly enough, the guy who was fond of both of them, who was their boss. So, and they complete each other by throwing clips to each other, guns to each other. They throw the keys to each other. Like, everything's working together, and the way they shot that just reinforces these two opposite worlds functioning together to become one amazing officer.
Well, that's actually what I was going to mention. All three of their personalities make up one good cop.
Oh, you're okay.
Right.
That's true. That's what it takes to take them down. So, I want to talk about the casting of who got selected just a little bit further. Elroy actually said that none of these characters meet the descriptions in the book, but he likes the casting so much in this one that even though he wrote the book, he now reads and sees these actors. So that's some pretty impressive casting.
It kind of shows you the power of casting, because, like, who knows where Crowe or Guy Pearce would be today if they didn't have this movie. Like, this was the movie, Like I'm sure they would have made their movies in Australia and things like that, but like this really opened them up to the American audience and to the, I would argue that these roles opened up their careers. I don't think we'd have some of their landmark performances without this movie.
So I have a lot of casting notes on this one. Feel free to chip in as we go along here. But Crowe was an unknown name, as I mentioned. They liked him in the movie Romper Stomper, which I have not seen, where he plays a tough guy. And they liked him, even though in the book he's supposed to be the biggest guy in the whole force. He's really not that big of a guy. Crowe was drawn to the fact that this man was truth and sensitive and a tough exterior. And so his performance on that of Sterling Hayden of Stanley Kubrick's The Killing of 1956 was something that he went back to watch. So he wanted to get that beefy manliness that came out of World War II to help create this character here. And Crowe even recalled that Elroy told him that Bud White doesn't drink. And so to get ready for the role, he gave up drinking. He said it's one of the most painful periods of his life. So
yeah, he had nothing to go home to after a day of shooting.
Basinger actually first passed on the role, second passed on the role, and third passed on the role. But Curtis Hanson didn't take no for an answer. At one point, she got a call saying that her clothes were being made for her role. And she had just had a little girl and wasn't really in the mode of acting. But something told her that if this guy really wants me this much, you do want to work with people who want to work with you. So persistence paid off in this case.
And got her an Oscar.
Yeah.
It's really interesting about Basinger just because before this movie was brought up to me for the podcast, I had just watched her in No Mercy with, I'm going to blank on his name now. Gene crap. Okay. Anyway, it's just another crime movie, detective movie from, I want to say the 80s.
It was Richard Gere.
Richard Gere. I'm sorry, not Gene. Gere is what I was trying to spit out. Anyway, I just watched this movie, and when I watched L.A. Confidential again, I was like, oh, she just kind of went for those damsel in distress roles, except in L.A. Confidential, she would never let you know she's in distress.
For sure. She had that 50s movie star confidence.
Well, I don't know if you guys have seen Gangster Squad or not, but is the same kind of machismo that I don't know why I can't remember people's names right now, but the main girl from Easy A.
Emma Stone?
Emma Stone. Thank you.
This is really good podcasting. Frye tries to recall names of actors.
You could do a whole
I
series
just
on
no,
that.
like had this huge just brain block for a solid minute.
Go on.
It's all good.
No, that was it.
Oh, okay.
I just bring for Kim Basinger. I just enjoyed the fact that I was like, oh, another Basinger movie. All right, let's do this.
And then she went on to work on 8 Mile with Hanson. She liked working with him a lot.
That's true. Now, Tyler, what do we think about Curtis Hanson as a director, as well as screenwriter and co-producer here? He's definitely the lifeblood of this movie. What are your thoughts on him and his contributions?
I knew that I'd seen a lot of his movies, but he's kind of a movie chameleon because he like I mentioned, he did 8 Mile. He also did like Wonder Boys with Michael Douglas. He did a surfing movie that came out a couple years ago. I think that had Gerard Butler in it. He's just kind of
Chasing Mavericks.
yes, that is
okay.
Chasing Mavericks.
I remember that.
And he kind of like in the 80s and early 90s he did Hand That Rocks the Cradle. He did The River Wild, so he was more kind of in like these thrillery things, and then he kind of switched genres. He's kind of a chameleon, but I mean it's really amazing when you read about all the things that he kind of wanted to do with the aesthetic of the movie. And like he didn't want the movie to look like a 50s movies. He wanted to look modern, so he instructed the costume and set people to be very period accurate and then push it all to the background. So he wanted the movie to he wanted to live in the 50s but also be something that almost looked modern, which I thought was really interesting. And he had so many great camera shots. Like I wish that I had written down a bunch of them that I liked, but like there were a bunch of times where I was like, ooh, I like that shot. Ooh, I like that.
And if there was one setting where you could pull that off, it would be L.A.
Oh, for sure.
To To extend on what you're saying about what he wanted, and you're right, he didn't want to be nostalgic, and he didn't want to create just a new noir. Audiences today actually don't tend to respond well to film noir, and they don't relate to it very well, and it would never gotten through with production, so to speak. But he wanted to focus on what was modern in the 50s. So we see the house is that, like DeVito's office is really cool. I'll get into some of these things here later, but there is a lot of parts of the 50s, even today, that still come off as being extremely modern and ahead of their time. There's a strong embrace in the 1950s. We just won a World War II. Technology is our friend, and all meals will be in the form of a pill. We're going to have flying cars, and technology is going to be our friend. And so there's a lot of optimism in the 50s, and in some ways, that idealism that holds through and carries through within art, culture, product design, and technology of the 50s still to this day seems like it's futuristic. It still seems like it's pushing ahead. And a lot of those ideals really are to be admired for certain today. And he said that the one exception to that is he did want to let Lynn Bracken feel like she was a element of a former era, and that he was okay with her because she was there to look like Veronica Lake. And she's the only character in the movie who knows what she is. Everybody else is grappling with a tough identity. Jack, Ed, and Bud are all grappling with, who they are and struggling with it, what they want to be, and what everybody else perceives them to be. Not to hijack you on that one, but I just thought that tied in so well with some of those other elements that Curtis Hanson was talking about in some interviews.
For sure, and I think that there was a lot more care put into this than I've seen in some of his other movies. And as I mentioned, like in my plot summary, I cut out like half of the plot of the movie. There's always something going on. There's always something happening to any of the characters, whether they're following a lead or they're in a shootout or they're falling in love, they're fighting with each other, they're fighting with there's always something going on. I didn't even mention Danny DeVito's character, who's a very interesting character. He runs the Hush Hush magazine with the tagline that Russell started the podcast off with, and he's very instrumental because he's also getting used by Captain Smith. He's being used in this manipulation of all these characters, and but the thing that's amazing is you're able to follow it all. Like in the end, it all still makes sense. You can trace the lines back, and it was all just very impressive to me.
Brian, Curtis Hanson, what are your thoughts, man?
I agree with the chameleon statement. He definitely has a very diverse film base. I mean, everything has its own kind of excitement, that thriller sense to it. But I would say that he is one of the best, less known directors. Like, if you had asked me 3 podcasts ago, name 4 directors that you revere, I'm not sure if I could have pulled his name out in a list of 15.
I think this is the top of, this is more than his Mount Rushmore. I think this is the top of his career. I don't know if you guys, I would assume.
No, I totally agree. I'm just saying that I've always really enjoyed this movie, but he's just not someone that pops into my head as like, oh, him. But then again, if somebody said, oh, the guy that directed LA Confidential, fantastic movie, let's do this. So yeah, I would say that I wouldn't be worried as a company hiring him to direct my movie. But at the same time, I'm not sure, if he had 2 or 3 more of these just knockout punches, I think he would be considered in the, Hall of Fame.
I myself kind of took a look at his previous catalog and kind of went like, how did this guy make such a good movie? Or how did he not make more good movies like what you're talking about? It is.
I mean, The River Wild was great.
Yeah, underrated.
I hold this movie up, I guess, a lot. So I'm always amazed that this guy did this movie, and he did it so well. So,
I mean, if you think about it this way, he's integral to some Kevin Bacon usage.
Oh, for sure. But also to Russell's point, it's staggering to think about the guy who directed this. His
In her
last movie
shoes.
was Chasing Mavericks is his last movie with Gerard Butler.
Yeah.
Which was enjoyable.
Yeah, but this movie is more than enjoyable.
Perhaps not memorable, but enjoyable.
Another fun Curtis Hanson story is Guy Pearce said that he learned a lot. Keep in mind, this is early in his career through Curtis Hanson. He said one of the biggest things he learned as an actor was the power of stillness. Hanson would tell him to stand still and just let him do the camera work and just convey the emotion that's on his face. Pearce was insecure about this at first, but he said it served him throughout the rest of his career in a really profound way. And Bryan called out Memento and those introspective moments that he is still. I can see that Pearce learned that lesson here in this movie. So that's a fun progression as an actor. So pretty cool that Hanson made that kind of an impact on him.
Agreed.
I wanted to go into atmosphere a little bit, and one of the things that I wanted to talk about here is Curtis Hanson also put together a series of images when he wanted to sell the movie and kind of flavor or essence or spirit of what he wanted the movie to be. And he took some of those images you see in the beginning when Danny DeVito's telling you about how wonderful LA is, the postcard, the orange groves, the beaches, the open freeway of California, the California dream. But he also incorporated elements of the gritty celebrity magazine, so that would later go on to influence Hush Hush. They actually did have smear media back in the day, kind of like they do today, and it graphically looked different. It was presented differently, and other things were in there as well. Like Bloody Christmas is a real story. The Night Owl is a real story that happened in LA, and they collected real events and they wove those into the movie, and it gave it a sense of authenticity. And like you guys were saying, he did want it rooted in the 50s, but he just didn't want you to be distracted by, oh, look at that toaster, look how different things were in the 50s. And so he didn't want to sell the noir angle. He wanted to sell, this is a California angle, and there's all parts of society here. You see the black neighborhoods, you see the movie stars, you see the drug connections, the gangsters, you see the prostitutes, and it's all happening in this place where all these interchanges and interstates are popping up. So it's a city of intersections and fast speed.
Well, I wouldn't peg the time frame as being the noir aspect. Like noir has always been heavily cynical. Like the idea of crime noir as being, fatalistic.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
Yeah.
Not necessarily to do with the set or anything or time frame where it's, because I look at Blade Runner and I say that's crime noir.
Oh, absolutely.
So Tyler, you live in Los Angeles, correct?
I do.
How much do you feel the Curtis Hanson version of Los Angeles? Is it overgrown by other elements, or do you really feel that mid-century vibe around town as you go around town?
I honestly think it depends on where you go. There's a part in the movie where they go to the Formosa Cafe, and it's where Guy Pearce thinks that one of the prostitutes is made to look up like Lana Turner, but it actually is Lana Turner. It's that scene.
I love that scene.
And that cafe is still here. It's actually a couple blocks from my apartment. So, there are those locations that are still around, and there are the places that still try to keep the old Hollywood vibe alive. But then you also have a lot more traffic, a lot more people, a lot more modernization, whether it's due to the industry or due to just kind of where society's heading today. But it's all fascinating, and I meant to jump in on this earlier. Sorry to change topics on you slightly about LA, Russell, but you mentioning that they called from real events and things like that. That was one of the things that I greatly enjoyed about the movie, because I'm sitting there thinking, because I knew that those events had happened as I was watching. I was like, oh man, it makes total sense that this police chief would think to take over Mickey Cohen's empire while he's in jail by doing this. Like that makes total sense to me. And I think it's a testament to their research and, well, not their research, as it was mostly Elroy's, but just to the idea of that. And I anything that finds a way to move fiction into to merge fiction and real life in a palatable and realistic way really gets me.
No doubt about it. So going back to the locations and stuff, I have to put on my architect hat for just a minute and nerd out and tell everybody the house that Patchett lives in is actually an amazing 1928-29 house in Los Angeles by famed architect Richard Neutra. This is an early example of steel framed housing in America, as well as gunite, which is a sprayed on concrete application. It's got simple, clean forms, flat roofs, large expanses of windows. They celebrate the precision of industrial means and the construction of art and technology all coming together, kind of what I was talking about, this optimistic view of what the future could be at the time and to create something that was going to make the world a better place. And it's kind of amazing that they put this in there. It's never been shot in a movie before, and so that's one of the reasons Curtis Hanson wanted to go to it. And it's perfect for Pearce Patchett. He just shows he's a man of style, sophistication, bravely different from everything around at the time. A lot of rich people at the time probably would have been in a stuffy old mansion, and they didn't want to do that with the character. So I really love this set piece. Probably of any house or piece of architecture we've done in any of this series, the Lovell House by Richard Neutra here just excites me. Is it just me, or is this did this place jumped out at me as like the best location in the movie? Is it just me, Brian?
No, I think a lot of the architecture is interesting, but it's also part of the reason I'd like to see more of LA. I think there's definitely stuff out there, especially a lot of the houses from old LA. I mean, you can even go as far as Iron Man, that iconic house. I'm a huge fan of people doing weird stuff with their homes, which is funny because I have a very traditional house, but I don't know. I enjoy seeing it.
Absolutely. And another fun one, the 1928 City Hall building, they do a good job of kind of setting it in the scene there to make it seem like it's the tallest building in Los Angeles, which it was all the way through 1964. Used to have a zoning code that made sure no building in LA was taller than that. The old Venice police station is also another police station in Assault and Precinct 13. So for fans of that movie, there's a little bit of overlap here. Lynn Bracken's house was done. They put a lot of thought into this one because they wanted it to feel different. They wanted to feel like you stepped inside of a fantasy. The downstairs is you're in Veronica Lake land, and everything's very swoopy and very like far-fetched. But the upstairs, that's for Lynn, and that part of the house was different. It's more stripped down, and that's the real her. And so when she lets Russell Crowe into that part of the house, or I should say Bud White into that part of the house, she's letting him in because he sees her as somebody that's more than just a Veronica White lookalike, and that's why she liked him so much. I don't know if you guys picked up on some of those physical set pieces to reinforce the character there.
I definitely did, and I think at one point the dialogue even backed it up too. I think there was a part where Russell Crowe said, "They all know you as Veronica Lake, but I know you as Lynn."
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, no, definitely. And back to your architecture thing, Russ. All of the sets were real locations. Like, they weren't sets they went out and filmed in LA. The only set that they actually had to build was the motel where they would take people to beat up, and where the final shootout happened. That was the only set. Everything else was real locations.
Yeah, and they turned it into Swiss cheese too.
Which is fair. That's probably why they had to build it.
Probably. Brian, what do you think about the wardrobe? We got a period piece. The look and feel of the time is very immersive. And what do you feel about the style and the glamour and the glitz of LA from these characters here?
I think that they did a good job doing wardrobe for a period piece, but at the same time, it being LA, who says it needs to stay there? I think it's like the director's whole piece about being both old and modern. I think they did a very good job at mimicking both aspects. The one thing I will say about, I guess, style back in that time, I don't know how anybody wore suits that baggy.
They look comfortable, man.
It just seems like it would. I don't know. I would think that if you're running after somebody, something like that would be encumbering.
Man, I don't know. I think your kids someday will want to look back at your jeans that you wore in junior high and say, why were they so baggy? But they were so comfortable.
Oh, I agree with that, but I'm not running after bad guys.
Oh, man. Clothes are most comfortable when they just barely touch you. Um, hey.
No skinny jeans for Russ.
No, not for me. Fun wardrobe story is Crowe wanted to come off as big, and he's not the biggest guy in the whole world. As I mentioned in the book, he's the biggest guy in the police force, and so he asked wardrobe director Ruth Myers to make his suit small, so it seemed like he was busting out of his suit. And being a aficionado of fashion and the aesthetics of the time and whatnot, she goes, that's just bad sewing, and didn't choose to go that route. And Crowe had actually an article where someone said people who are dressed well in movies, and he actually got into this, and he cut it out and gave it to her because he's supposed to be a blunt instrument and an unimaginative dresser, but he was saying, like, you dressed me too well, but you made me look good, so thank you. But kind of like wink, wink, nod, nod, you made me look too good. So.
And like I said, nothing made me happier than watching a bunch of dudes in suits with shotguns running around having a shootout like that. That not only is it like great stylistically and costume wise, but it just looks cool.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
If you haven't seen Gangster Squad, you should watch Gangster Squad. Josh Brolin.
Another thing that I looked for there was Ed Exley's got these really pale blues and icy grays, which kind of goes with his character. And it's interesting, again, back to Bud White, Russell Crowe's character, he's got a lot of warm browns, and that shows the warmth in his character. And those things kind of set up, Exley's stern. And then obviously you got Jack, who's got a flair, and, he's out to make a statement.
For sure. And when we haven't even talked about the thing with Exley's glasses, too. That was a very big character sticking point.
Stop telling a man that carries a gun to take his glasses off. Please put them on.
Yeah, he told him to take them off. Then he's like, "Just don't shoot me."
No, that's a good comment about wardrobe there. And then another one of my favorite pieces of wardrobe is Kim Basinger. She's beautiful, by the way, and that first appearance. The reveal, as she's in this black cloak with the white framing of her face along the trim of her hood, and the way the camera rolls around and shoots her, that's just such a good reveal, and that's such a good use of the wardrobe to make this dramatic unveiling of what is a very important character. It's amazing. And Kim said that she had a hard time with some of the elegant clothes that she was wearing. She admits to being a bit of a tomboy, and she's got a very cute Georgia kind of accent, so she's not necessarily what you perceive on the screen, but that's acting. She comes across as everything they, and she got an Oscar for it too. So
yeah.
Tyler, what do you think about the yellow tones of this movie? There's like none of the reds are in there. Things are desaturated, very yellow. Why do you think that was?
To kind of go with what we were talking about with Hanson and what he wanted to do with the aesthetic of the movie. It kind of deep down, it's like a very dirty story. Nobody, like, there are heroes, but they're not necessarily good guys. They all do something not great character-wise throughout the course of the movie. Everyone thinks of LA, and like the movie even starts out with it with Danny DeVito's voiceover talking about the glitz and the glamour of Hollywood and all of that, and then everything is dark and cold and yellow and kind of dirty throughout the whole entire movie. And I think it's kind of countering what people think LA is.
Huh. I have a little bit of a different take on that one, but Brian, how about you? What do you think about this? It's a big stylistic decision, and it carries throughout the whole movie. No reds, no saturated blues, only the coolest of grays and blues, and lots of yellow everywhere. Pale yellow. What do you make of this? Do you like it?
Yeah, absolutely. And to compound what Tyler was saying, one of the hallmarks of noir cinema is moral ambiguity. And I feel like that really feeds into that sense that you may have characters doing things that they think is right and that they're putting out there that they think this is the right thing to do. But there's a whole spectrum of feelings you can have on that matter on whether or not they're actually doing the right thing or not. And that's what makes these movies so much fun.
It is pretty pervasive. There are moments where things do go a little bit colorful. When they're in the black neighborhoods, I feel like there's some moments there where the desaturation is less dramatic than on the interiors or the night scenes. I think that for Curtis Hanson, he mentions a strong sense of sunlight and shadow. There's parts of the California that are, as Tyler mentioned, in the shadows and are gritty and some of the things that he's talking about. But it's also contrasted with the sunlight. And so when you're in Lynn's house, things are very bright white and fantasy filled, and it's the finest of fine things and like really nice white light coming in. And similarly at Patchett's house, going back to the Neutra's level house, again, that green bright lawn that he's hitting golf balls on and the way the light's pouring into his library, it seems like a very different place. So you've got the place of the celebrities, but you've also got the places of the gangsters and the grit and stuff. So I actually see this as a moment of contrast. And the cops live in the intersection.
Yeah, no, yeah, I think that is also a very valid point. And that's the beauty of film, was we all kind of can take away something different and take away, form our own opinions.
One last lighting comment. I love the light that pours through the bullet holes. So they park the cars outside and the headlights light an otherwise dark hotel interior as the fight ensues. I really loved I had to make a note of that one. I said, man, that's just really good lighting.
Well, not just that, they're before all the cars start showing up, they're basically in the darkness, and you just see the headlights kind of come in the background and then turn off, and you're like, oh, here comes trouble. Like, it's like a great signifier of here comes trouble, especially once the second, the third, and the fourth, and it's just kind of like the calm before the storm. It's kind of setting you up for that.
Yeah, it was cool.
Let's do a brief look for this. Brian, do you have one look for this moment?
My look for this moment, and this is one of my favorite parts of the movie, is when Kevin Spacey and Guy Pearce get back out to the car after he mistook the actual actress for a hooker that had been made up as the actress. And he just had a drink thrown in his face, Guy Pearce had, and they're sitting in the car and they just look at each other and start laughing. That's a camaraderie moment that I felt like Guy Pearce's character had not had yet. And it's just one of those things that, like, that's a story. Police careers are made up of stories, and that sort of signified. I know he was kind of getting the pat on the back from everybody after killing those guys, but it just kind of signified the first time he had some real, like, pat on the back moment with another cop.
I like it. Tyler, look for this.
I'm just very fascinated with Guy Pearce. I think he's a fantastic actor, but one of the things that I read is, I guess James Ellroy was doing a reading in Australia, and Guy Pearce was in the audience, and someone had asked James Ellroy, are any of his stuff getting made into movies? He actually said yes, they're actually going to be adapting LA Confidential, and it's actually going to be starring 2 Australian actors, to which everyone broke out laughing. They thought it was hysterical, and they thought that he was just saying that because he was in Australia. And so it gave him doubts about doing the movie, because he literally saw the idea of 2 Australian guys leading a big Hollywood movie as a joke.
All right. My look for this moment is going to be the body count in this movie equals 30 dead bodies. So My favorite of which is a big rat under the house. So, Bryan, how's this movie affect you, man?
This is just one of those movies that puts me in a happy place in terms of how movies watch. I mean, it's thoroughly entertaining. The ending is very satisfactory just in terms of what happens and how it culminates and everything. This is a highly rewatchable film that, you can just put on basically whenever you want to.
Absolutely. Tyler, how's this movie affect you?
I would agree, and I don't know why I've become this person, but I've started to be a big mentioner of runtime of movies and how long movies are, and the runtime of this movie is 2 hours and 18 minutes, and I probably could have continued to watch it for 2 or 3 more hours. I was just constantly absorbed in the movie, even watching it now, knowing where it was going. I felt like I noticed different things, and as it was kind of brought up earlier, I thought of things differently than how I'd originally been interpreting them, and it didn't feel its length, and it's just a very enjoyable movie with arguably one of the better shootouts to conclude a film.
For me, and I'm going to be a little more specific on this one, I really like Russell Crowe character and how he kind of cuffs and hits the wife beater in the beginning. Somehow this is a form of justice that I kind of root for to happen more often, and in the limited times, and I have seen a moment or two, I won't be too specific, you see a disturbing thing happen between a husband and a wife, or a boyfriend and a girlfriend, and something abusive. You do wish sometimes that Russell Crowe would come from behind them and beat the dude up.
He did not care. It was something he believed in, and he stood up for it regardless.
So my favorite time of the show, superlative time. It's time to find out what you guys like best in this movie. Tyler, give us your MVP.
Guy Pearce.
Guy Pearce. Bryan.
Yeah, this one's going to be a tough one for me because there are so many parts of this movie that I really, really liked. I'm going to give my MVP to Russell Crowe just based on where I was in terms of his career when I watched this movie.
And I think Mary's actually with you on this one. She's not a Russell Crowe fan. She says this is her favorite performance of his as well. So, but for me, I'm going to go with the Curtis Hanson. I just think the fact that he helped produce this thing, he had to go to bat for it really hard. They did not want to make a movie that had multiple characters in it. They did not want to make a retro movie. They did not want to do a movie without big stars in it. And he did such a good job to find the right tone in the movie, to tell a great story. And he just does an amazing job here. So I'm going to go Curtis Hanson. Best Supporting Actor, Tyler.
Can I cheat a little bit on this one?
I guess.
My best supporting actor, I put that in quotes, air quotes, is the score.
Okay.
I love the score of this movie. And I think it set the tone so many times in the movie. We hadn't mentioned it yet, and I was sitting here thinking about it, and that's my best supporting actor.
I like it.
I'm glad you brought it up. We were a little long in the tooth, and I wanted to move through some of these things. I'm sorry I kind of cut soundtrack out, but good job to at least call attention to it. It is really good. Bryan, best supporting actor.
I'm going to go with supporting actor with Cromwell here. It's not like he's never played a bad guy before or since. I don't know. He definitely put out this eerie, this guy. Through most of it, I felt like you could tell he was somewhat duplicitous from the beginning with just how he handled Exley's character, but then given his verbiage on when he praises other cops, how much he kind of deplored what he was willing to do. Like, he got it from a political standpoint, but as a detective, he was kind of like, they're going to hate you hard.
Well, I'm going to go with the Academy on this one. I'm going to go with Kim Basinger. I always mess that up and go back and forth on that one. But I think she just does an amazing job. She looks so pretty in the outfits that she's got on, and she just plays a part that is so important to this because she is the mirror that sees through everybody for what they are, whether they see it themselves or whether they're deluding themselves for what they are. So great character, and she is just so good at it. So good job, Kim Basinger. You deserve that Oscar, I say. So
Agreed.
hidden gem. This is somebody who didn't get the praise that they want. Maybe somebody buried in the cast. Tyler, who do you like for hidden gem?
I'm going to go with David Strathairn as Pearce Patchett.
I love it.
I think people most know him as from Good Night and Good Luck, but I think that he, like, even the first time you look at him and he's the way he carries himself, like, I think he had like a kind of like a seedy mustache, and like I feel like there was always more that they could have done with him to make him seedier. I feel like he was putting it there. It's just they didn't have it was cut for time.
I don't know that he's seedy. I mean, he treats his ladies pretty well by pimp standards.
A pimp standpoint?
Yeah. I mean, if I were going to be a pimp, I would want to live in the Lovell house, and I would treat my ladies much nicer and pay them much nicer, make sure they were in nice homes too, because they're the ones doing all the hard work. So
that's fair. I guess I mean more just like the idea of what his character is doing, like what his chosen profession is not a
it's not savory.
Ideal. Yeah.
Yeah. So Bryan, hidden gem.
My hidden gem's going to be Ron Rifkin. He plays the DA. I'm a huge fan of this actor.
Mm-hmm.
He plays one of the best antagonists in television on Alias, which was a huge, his portrayal of Arvin Sloane is one of the kind of hallmarks of television for me. So this was before that, but just fantastic. I'm a huge fan of his.
I love both of those picks. I'm going to go a little bit deeper, and I'm going to say Simon Baker caught my eye and just is memorable. He plays Matt Reynolds, the aspiring actor who's setting out to frame the DA and out him as a gay man. Somehow, he just his time on screen is short, but I like his nervous energy that, he's just so desperate to make it, which is another moment of LA. People come to LA with big dreams. He's willing to do anything to get a shot to be in a TV show. So, Tyler, if you had to recast somebody, which this is hard, if you had to recast somebody, who would it be and who would you put in their place?
I've got two. One has nothing to do with performance. The other does. Sid Hudgens is described as a tall and sickly thin man in the novel, which Danny DeVito is not. So I just think that it was more to get Danny DeVito apart in the movie. I think it would have been interesting to see who they could have gotten else in that role.
Boo.
I like I said, I had no problem with DeVito in the role. It's just it's back to the whole Jack Reacher, Tom Cruise thing where he doesn't look like
God,
the way
I
the
totally
character
agree
is
with
described.
Oh,
So
man.
like
DeVito's
Never
narration
been a
is-
worse man.
Sorry, DeVito's narration is just so good, though. I love him, and he does seem like this energetic guy who's driving around town, driving up controversy.
And I like him. I like Danny DeVito in the role just as described on the page. He's different than, so I'd be interested to see who else they could have gotten for that. The other person I actually would have recast was the Mentalist, Mr. Simon Baker. I didn't particularly enjoy him in this, but the flip side of that is I don't know who else I would have put in there. So I'll hang my head in shame on that one.
Yeah, ouch, man. That you got me on both of those. I loved. I hurt me on DeVito there. Bryan, recast.
I'm going to kind of tie it back to something I had said earlier in the show, just to have that plug again. But I'm not saying this needs to be recast because it doesn't. But I could easily see Hugh Jackman playing Jack Vincennes. Just this,
Oh yeah.
high flying, like got that charisma. This is what I do. I think that would have been an awesome, like if they were to redo this movie now, I could see him being pulled for that piece. Past that, I don't know. There's not a whole lot you could really change for me. I agree that DeVito was good for it, but I haven't read the book. I will say that in terms of casting gone wrong, I completely agree with the Jack Reacher piece. I've read several of Lee Child's books, and you couldn't get someone further from the visual of Jack Reacher than Tom Cruise. Although I did enjoy both of the Jack Reacher movies. The other one, the only thing that I would put anywhere close to a miss on casting would have been Tom Hanks as Robert Langdon in Angels and Demons and Inferno and Da Vinci Code.
Okay.
That was another brutal one. Brutal miscast.
So, L.A. Confidential, though, you're going with Jackman over Spacey.
I also think Ryan Gosling would have been good as Vincennes, but that's just me.
Okay.
Well, the thing is, he played that part already. Not that specific part, but he plays that character in Gangster Squad with Josh Brolin. So
that's what made me
he's
think
already kind of done it because that's another noir movie. And they pull in characters similar to these, whether you want to say as an homage to it or whatever, but it's literally a prequel to this because they're going after Mickey Cohen, and Mickey Cohen goes to jail at the beginning of this movie.
So I'm going to go with, for my recast, Paleo Serganti, or Sergianti. I'm not good with this name here. But anyway, he plays Johnny Stompanato, the goon who gets his ball squeezed by Russell Crowe. I wanted something better from this actor, and I'm kind of taking the easy road out because I love the casting of this movie. Love Crowe, love Spacey, love Pearce, and Cromwell too, and Strathairn. I'm going to put Jerry O'Connell.
You just wanted to see somebody else get their balls squeezed.
Yeah, and I wanted that to be Jerry O'Connell because I think he would be the right amount of jerk beforehand / be funny enough when that happens to him. So he's coming off of Jerry Maguire and Joe's Apartment, and he's doing Scream 2 in 1997, but I think he has time to get his ball squeezed in the meantime.
Cinematic masterpiece, Scream 2.
Yes.
Either him or even call from another actor who's appearing in Scream 2 as Timothy Olyphant.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Best shot.
I'll tell you what. Timothy Olyphant. Just because you brought that up, how about Timothy Olyphant instead of Guy Pearce?
Ooh, that hurts. Now I'm the one that's hurting.
That was his MVP, man. That's a low blow.
I love Timothy Olyphant though. So
best shot of the movie, Tyler.
I think we already said it. It's the shot at the end with the all the cars pulling up with their lights and then going dark and kind of really setting the scene for the final gunfight.
There are alternate posters that have that as part of the image of the movie. So good choice on that. Brian, best cinematic moment, best shot.
Yeah, gosh, that was mine too.
It's okay. You're allowed to agree.
Yeah, I don't know. I was like desperately trying to think, okay, what's my next favorite? If I'm going to go with the next favorite, I actually really like the shot where Vincennes is dancing with the girl and Danny DeVito comes up.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's like, can I get, and she just like totally bounces on him and he just has that look like, hey, it's not for everybody.
My best shot I mentioned ahead of time was the camera rotating around Kim Basinger at the market in the beginning when we first meet her, and she's in that black cloak with the white trim on there, and there's red lips and her pale face. As Crowe meets her for the first time, and she's striking, and he takes a notice of her. I mentioned before how much I love that scene. So also just a small nod to Ed stopping the elevator with his shotgun, firing it into the doorway, and the camera shifts as we see his face, like at a moment where he's really shaken up. So,
that's a good one.
That's a very close.
I know they're actually pointing this out in the movie, but I also like the whole thing where you have Kevin Spacey talking to DeVito about, I'm going to bring him out here, and then you can see the movie release in the background.
Oh yeah.
So that whole shot down the street.
Yeah, no, that was a good one too, and really good telling of Vincennes' character as well.
So best scene, Tyler.
I actually did a report on this scene in film school. It's the scene where they're interrogating the three African American gentlemen, and he's flipping certain parts of the conversation so that they can all hear and intimidate each other and like all that kind of stuff. I just think it's a brilliant scene, and one of the first times you actually see Ed Exley, like you actually see him be a good cop rather than people telling you how good he is. Like you see like all the mechanisms working in his brain, and I think it's amazing.
Good insights on that one. Brian, best scene.
I think I'm actually going to echo your elevator scene, but the entire thing that comes of him taking the guy who didn't really want to go with him into the room, his partner gets shot, he kills the first guy, like that whole him just really breaking into that role that he wasn't supposed to be good at, according to Cromwell.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is a hard one. I had maybe two runner-ups, but the one that I'm going to pick is the interrogation scene where Ed Exley goes from each of the black young men and pulls the lever to like share information across the intercom to pin them up against each other by manipulating what they hear and what they don't hear. I like that the guy pees himself. I like that one guy's difficult to get along with, and he's just breaking him down. And then out of nowhere, Russell Crowe can't take it anymore. It's not going fast enough for him. He plays Russian roulette by popping the gun in that guy's mouth. All the while, there's another great shot. This is very hard to do. The director is shooting through the glass, and you can see the people on the inside of the interrogation room, and you see the reflection, and it's very clear, so you can see them, but you also see into the actual room where the subject is being interrogated. It's just really well shot. I love the pace through there, and that's probably my favorite scene in the movie. But I do have to give a nod to Bud and Ed shaking down the DA and dangling him out the window.
Oh,
it's interesting that your interpretation of that scene was Bud losing patience. Because I always read that as that's the moment where it's mentioned that they're holding a woman and that they basically were raping her.
Right. He couldn't take that anymore.
Yeah, like his sensibility to protect women just like, really shone through there.
Absolutely. And this was a hard one to pick a good scene on. So, I mean, there are like 5 other ones I wanted to give a credit to, but that's my favorite. Change one thing, Tyler.
Gosh, I don't think I would.
Ugh, coward.
I know.
All right, Brian.
Hey, I went after Danny DeVito. I'm not too much of a coward.
Okay, you want to make Danny DeVito taller? That's your change one thing. Give him stilts.
Stretch him out.
Yeah, long legs. Brian, change one thing.
I'm actually going to echo something that I had said already for Black Hawk Down. This movie could have been longer.
You know what?
Yeah.
I normally disagree with you, but this time I just had such a good time with it. You're right. I wanted Hanson to make the other 4 movies, or the rest of the quartet. I love it so much.
I had actually seen where this was originally slated to be a mini-series, and I was like, oh, don't tease me with that.
If you buy the Blu-ray, you can see the pilot episode of year 2000 LA Confidential pilot. So,
which I think had Kiefer Sutherland in it, or I think it was supposed to air on like HBO or something like that.
Yeah. So for me, I'm going to go with my change one thing is I'd like to make Bud is more injured than I would like in the end. He appears to be a vegetable and unable to talk, move, and like Lynn's driving him off into the sunset.
He got shot in the face.
I would like one in the stomach and maybe in an arm band. I'd like to think that he's not ruined for the rest of his life. And maybe he's not, but I think he is. So,
well, I mean, it went through his cheek. I'm sure that's very unpleasant, and that definitely speaks to why he can't speak. But
I just want to let him know that he's.
Face,
I want to know he's going to be okay. So this is my change one thing.
That's fair.
Maybe he loses an arm or something like that. But I don't like the idea of having Russell
That's
Crowe
my
sitting.
punching arm.
Yeah, I don't want to see Bud sitting there in a living room like 10 years from now, like with like Lynn like spoon feeding him applesauce, saying, "Come on, dear, you have to eat." So
That is one thing that you can appreciate about this movie is your two stars do get roughed up in the end of this movie, and one of my favorite things to point out is they actually had to reload in this movie. Like they didn't have the magical clip that seems to never run out of bullets. They had to reload, and they got shot up real good.
okay, and best quote, Tyler.
I'm gonna have to go with "They know me as Veronica, but you know me as Lynn."
And Brian, best quote.
I don't know, man. I'm
Okay.
yeah. I have a hard time picking this one.
I've got one for you here, and that's by Captain Dudley Smith, and he goes, "I wouldn't trade all the places. Or I wouldn't trade places with Ed Exley right now for all of the whiskey in Ireland."
Yeah.
Boyo.
Well, thank you guys for coming on the show and doing this. This has been a lot of fun. But before we go into do the ratings and reviews and carry this one home, Tyler, can you do me a favor and tell people one more time about After the Credits?
Yeah, it's my entertainment website that I just started. We have everything from movie reviews. We just started a segment called Late to the Party where we watch something that everybody else has already watched and kind of review it. We also, looking to do things like where we bring to light movies that are on VOD, just really anything entertainment based, but mostly on movies.
Awesome. And it is such a cool site. Please do check out After the Credits. Tyler's doing some great work over there. So, 5-star rating scale. Does this movie hold up, Tyler?
Oh, absolutely. I would even say it held up better than I remembered it.
All right. 5 stars, though?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's not only is it a great movie, a great crime movie, it's a fantastic movie, and yeah, no, I'd recommend it to anybody.
All right. And Brian, 5-star scale, what do you give this movie?
I'm gonna go ahead and give it a 5 as well. It's fantastic.
I'm going to make it a clean sweep. For the third time of the show, it's history. We've got a 5-star 3-way clean sweep. I love this movie, if you couldn't tell already. So, kudos to this movie. Let's talk about the movie we're going to do next time. Brian, you want to help me pick that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's time to get funny, don't you?
Sure.
Yeah.
Funny is always good.
So we got 3 funny movies. So we got Half Baked is option number 1 from 1998, a story of 3 not so bright men who come up with a very serious, crazy scheme to get a friend out of jail. Option 2, Coming to America from 1988. An extremely pampered African-American prince travels to Queens, New York, and goes undercover to find a wife who he can respect for her intelligence as well as her will. And option number 3, Friday from 1995. 2 homies, Smokey and Craig, smoke a dope dealer's weed and try to figure a way to get the $200 they owe to the dealer by 10 p.m. that same night.
I think we're gonna go with Coming to America.
Okay, it's a good pick. It's a good pick. It's a good one.
Solid.
Fantastic pick. I don't think you could go wrong with any of those 3.
That's right. And so, Tyler, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. You've been a great host. And Brian as well, thank you for coming on. And
Not a problem, man. Always a pleasure.
Holding it down as always.
Had a lot of fun.
To all the you lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable, please reach out to us, like us on Facebook, write to us on Retro Movie Roundtable at yahoo.com. Give us let us know what you think of the show. We really appreciate reviews from iTunes that we get. That helps the show grow. Like us on wherever you get your podcast, and tell a friend. We really want to help grow the show. If you know somebody who would be good to come on the show, we're always looking for that too. So, as always, thank you for listening. Be good to each other and watch more movies. Brian?
I'm going to give you guys a quote from another one of my favorite detectives. This is Marty Hart from HBO's True Detective, and it has specifically to do with detectives. You know, I've seen all different types. We all fit a certain category. The bully, the charmer, the surrogate dad, the man possessed by ungovernable rage, the brain. And any of those types could be a good detective. And any of those types could be an incompetent shitheel.